will bring a smile because it's one about smiling, and it's this idea of how you see is what you see, and that, probably most of you watching this have heard that on occasion, and yet it's needs this constant reminder, at least for me, this constant reminder. Oh yeah, it's real important, not just what I see, but how I see, because how I see will determine what I see. And there's countless examples of that. And it's interesting today, kind of looking at the context here, the spiritual context from a Christian New Church perspective. So we've been looking at Noah's the Ark, flood is over, ark comes to rest, animals are released, and that's where we're offered a beautiful little piece of biblical commentary for us to consider and just hold, from Emmanuel Swinburne, where he offers this idea about what starts to happen, and it's this perspective shift when we're really, really able to let things go. And again, we're not talking. Well, I mean, we could be talking about letting things go in a negative sense, letting go of an insult or a worry or a concern. But here, I think it's really letting go of, like, here's the good stuff in my life. Here are the gifts. I'm just going to let them go. I'm going to let them go out there into the world and do their thing without being overly worried into transactional way about how does this gift work or what will I get back or any of those pieces. That was the story we've been looking at a couple of weeks ago. But there's really this just like, okay, my job is to go out there in the world to do good to all the people I run across as best I can, as imperfectly as I can, as humbly as I can, and just let it go. Knowing some of the time it's going to work, some of the time it won't, some of the time will be received, some of the time it won't. But none of that no longer matters because we're not doing it for what comes back to us. We're just doing it for the simple reason that it's the right thing. And that's why, again, I think that beautiful quote for any of you who are involved in the 12-step tradition of, yeah, just do the next right thing. Like that's what this is. And you let go of the results. You don't do the next right thing so that you just simply do the next right thing and let the chips fall where they may. So that's what this is talking about, a perspective that arises out of that. And it's kind of interesting. And again, the language here a little stilted, but the point I think is profound. Everyone is capable of realizing that our general viewpoint governs all our specific perceptions, including all our sense perceptions, whether acquired through eyes or ears. In fact, we don't have any interest in the objects of our senses unless they make part of the overall picture. To those whose hearts are glad, this is the key part. To those whose hearts are glad, for instance, everything they hear or see appears cheerful and smiling. But to the depressed, everything they see or hear seems grim and melancholy. I love that. I love that image, right? Of like we go out there into the world and we go out there with a heart of gladness. Everything we see seems like it's smiling back on us. And that idea, right, of what smiles back on us. And if we see the world from gladness, we'll see many, many things smiling back on us. Now that's not a Pollyannish statement because no matter how filled with hope you are, or we are, or a certain person is, of course they're going to have days that are dark and more aligned with despair than anything else. But I think it's still important to remember that our basic orientation is so true. And as I was mentioning to somebody yesterday, and it's a line I've preached on here before. It's why cynicism is so dangerous, because here's the tricky part with a cynic. A cynic is always quote unquote right, because that cynicism is always looking out there into the world, picking the evidence that reinforces itself, and then bringing that back into a world explanation, into a paradigm that continues to build and build and build and build. So we become more and more and more and more cynical. That does not work terribly well. And when that happens, we get sort of a high conflict orientation. High conflict is where all that matters is the conflict, not the resolution. We get into that high conflict place. That high conflict orientation has a magnetism in and of itself, just like cynicism. It has a magnetism that keeps on drawing back and drawing back and drawing back. And the beautiful part, folks, is we can choose differently. We can choose to come from this much more glad place, a place filled with a lot more smiles. And then what will we see? We'll see the world smiling back at us. That's a much better place to be, because that will yield solutions. It's interesting that a deeply cynical viewpoint, that kind of orientation tends to collapse in on itself because it's ego driven. All things ego driven will collapse in on themselves. And a smile, gladness, kindness, joy, whatever word you want to use, that tends to be very expansive because that particular emotion is an emotion, blessed by God that helps us to share, helps us to expand our picture. So, friends, this is what I would ask of all of us today is this crazy one. It's a different orientation. I'm not going to ask you to go out there and think about your perspective. I'm going to ask all of us to have maybe just a little bit of time today where we allow the world to smile at us. And it could be, I'm taking my daughter's dog out on a walk. It's a really fun and funny dog. And so I'm looking forward to that. Let that smile at me. What is that for you today? What can you do today you can allow to actually smile back at you? And again, you may be having a hard day, get it. And maybe there's just a little tiny piece of grace in there where you can find that smile looking right back at you. So that is the thought for today, folks. So please remember, how you see is what you see, and may that how be filled with a lot of gladness and smiles today. So with that, what we're going to do now is we're going to shift gears. And the gear shifting is, if you're joining us for the first time, it's the little more meditative part of the 10 minutes of morning calm. It's the calm part of the 10 minutes. And what we're going to do is real simple. We're going to do a little line of scripture, several thousand years old. We're going to use that sort of as lectio divina, as in a sort of quieter sense. Then we're going to go through and do a prayer, and then we're going to go through and do the ancient Levitican blessing at the end of it, and then we will close saying hello to folks on social media. So, friends, let's all get a big breath. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's take a quick little cheery look here and see how folks are doing on this fine, beautiful morning. All right, a few comments there. Let's take a look at these. Rita, good morning to you, my friend. Looking forward to that baptism coming up. Marcus, good morning to you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Sherry, normal nature always brings a smile. Yeah, that is really interesting, Sherry. How like nature, I feel like I've been thinking a lot about like how nature. Why is it that nature's so powerful? Why that? And I think because it puts us in the role of recipient. We don't master nature; we observe it. And I think there's a lot of spiritual wisdom in there. Yeah, just a lot of spiritual wisdom in there. I could go on and on about that, but that's a thought. Simply, when I wallow in self-seeking, I'm anxious. When I broaden the perspective to kinship, I'm in community. That community might be navigating a rough patch, but it holds more grace and fellowship than the personal salvation of self-seeking. It's so true, Mary. And I just, boy, that is such an old saw. For me personally, like it's a misnomer when faith gets just made to be a personal salvation project. It just isn't. Like it does have a communal aspect to it. I mean, it's just not to belabor the point, but to belabor the point. Fascinating again, coming back again and again and again. Here's Jesus, and he needs 12 followers, and not all of them were perfect. I think we know that. And here's what's considered the most holy sacrament of the Christian church. And again, how do we do it? We do it in a circle. We do it in communion. So, Mary, that is really, really well said. Thank you for sharing that. And now let's take a hop on over to my particular page and see what comments we have there. All right. 2 number of comments there. Kim, good morning to you, and I hope you're doing well. Paige, my friend, good morning to you. Joy writes, animals are a great way to achieve this. Cat cuddles on this rainy day. Nature does it for me too. Yeah, it's so true. And I'll try to put a picture up of our daughter's dog. That little dog is quite something else. Quite something else. Carl writes, what is that for me today? It's getting my oldest sister to drive to the park, so I can remember names these days, and see incredibly beautiful trees that nearly got destroyed in the 2020 wildfire. Yeah, Carl, that's beautifully said. And something about trees, right? Yeah. What is it about trees? What is it about trees? And Carl, I see your mom has joined us too. So it's great to have you joining us there this morning. And Linda, good morning to you, my friend. So, folks, thank you for all joining me this morning. Always great to get a chance to share this with you. And whether you're joining us live or you're joining us archived, whatever time of the week, whatever part of the country or the world, it's wonderful to have you here. It's 10 minutes of morning calm, and wishing you all the very best. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.